Good evening to all the participants. I welcome you to this 72nd leadership conversation with a very interesting guest that we have, Mr. Vikas Chawla. Please join me in welcoming him. Mr. Vikas Chawla, good evening and welcome to this conversation.
Glad to be here.
I'm happy that you have taken out time to actually do this conversation and your presentation. On behalf of ICFAI and on behalf of all the regular participants who turn up every Friday, I welcome you and I thank you for this time and expertise that you're going to share. Yeah, we call it Wise Views Leadership Conversations. The topic for the day is Decoding the Digital Jungle, to be done by Mr. Vikas Chawla. He's the co-founder of Social Beat. The first half an hour is this introduction as well as the presentation by Mr. Vikas Chawla, followed by the next half an hour where we have a Q&A moderated by my esteemed colleague, Professor Prasad, and myself. This is Mr. Vikas Chawla, very handsome. Let me take the privilege of reading out his profile. It's a brief profile. He's a digital marketing leader, entrepreneur, author, and angel investor. He is the co-founder of Social Beat, which is a trusted digital growth partner for leading brands and hyperscaling startups in India. They have a 300 plus member team, and they are amongst India's fastest growing digital marketing solutions companies. He is an alum of London School of Economics and the winner of the prestigious British Council UK Alumni Award 2020 for India and South Asia. He actively mentors and invests in startups in India via the Chennai Angels and IP Ventures. He brings close to 2 decades of experience with organizations like Murugappa Group, NSDC, Taj Hotels, and ISEC. So this is a fantastic profile. Once again, Mr. Vikas, welcome to you. I will also introduce Professor Prasad. He is the Director of Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He is also the professor and course mentor for the online MBA program. He brings with himself about 3 decades of experience in entrepreneurship, corporate life, as well as academic world. He holds a BTech from IIT Bombay and a PGDM from IIM Kolkata. He published several articles, books, and conference papers presented across seminars and conferences in India and abroad. Welcome, Professor Prasad, and thank you.
Thank you.
So I request Mr. Vikas to help us decode the digital jungle. Over to you. The floor is open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Sudhakar, and glad to be here as part of the Five Eyes Speak series. So I'm going to share my screen. And so the title of the book is also the title of this talk today. And hopefully I'll be able to decode this. So we'll spend about 25-30 minutes on this, and happy to take any questions along the way and towards the end. So what I'm going to cover today is really about, starting off with how has the digital evolved, especially from the Indian context. Talk a bit about what we call as a full funnel marketing, which is essentially an integrated approach to making things happen. And we'll break that funnel down, which is the upper funnel, middle funnel, and bottom funnel, the 3 parts. And finally, a lot of it is around also measurement. How do you track all of this? Because you may do all this marketing, but it needs to eventually translate into some business, some outcomes, and we'll talk about that. So when I talk about digital and how it's evolved in India, we go back to, we've been in this space about 10 years now. And when we started out, there were hardly, 1 or 2 crore sort of active internet users at that point in time. There were hardly anything that you could do to really drive business outcomes. But today, we have close to about 65 crore internet users, which is, in my view, still a small number because we still have half the population of India that still doesn't have access to internet. So that means it's exciting to see how that's going to happen over the next 10, 12, 15 years, where a lot more Indians would get access to internet. And with 5G coming in as soon as 2022, we'll need to see how that can really pan out. And if you look at especially in the digital channels, we've seen that, of course, there's so many channels, right? You have social media channels, which I've listed here, but you also have the OTT channels like Hotstar and ZEE5 and Voot. You also have the games, which people play actively. You have news websites. So there's a plethora of platforms that go around, and we'll touch upon some of that. But these are some of the social media channels and which are popular today in India. And YouTube still is by far the largest, followed by Instagram. WhatsApp is messaging, not really social, but it's also very large, as you might imagine. Now, coming to the full funnel approach itself that we talk about, and some of you who studied marketing will probably know this, is really, how do you get more and more people to be aware of who you are? And that's typically what we call as top funnel or upper funnel. And as that happens, you then take them down the consideration set, which means they may be choosing between multiple brands. How do you make them choose and bring your brand into that consideration set, which is typically the middle funnel? And finally, the bottom of the funnel is how do you get them to transact with you? How do you get them to walk into your store? How do you get them to buy something from you? How do you get them to inquire about your product, solution, services? And this is typically the approach we take for any brand in any industry, be it a consumer brand, be it a B2B brand, be it a small brand or a big brand. This is a very good approach to kind of look at. And there are different things you would do at different parts of this funnel for it to really work. Now, we're going to go into each of these, the three parts, the upper funnel, the mid funnel, and the bottom funnel. When you look at the upper funnel of it, it's really about how do you build the brand and build the brand to the right audience, which is relevant to your brand and to your industry. Now, typically, that involves multiple things, but it starts off with you figuring out what your brand's USP is. Because if you don't know what's unique about you, your brand, and what you're trying to say, then any kind of marketing is not going to help, because you need to be clear what that brand's ethos and unique selling proposition is. So that's really at the apex of that brand building. And you get that actually by talking to customers and understanding your customers. And that involves doing some bit of consumer surveys, talking to them, talking to users of your product and also non-users of your product, because you may not be, you may be able to think of new product ideas and brand ideas as you look at some of those non-users of your product as well. So understanding your consumer is very important. There are some online tools, which I'll talk about shortly, which also help you understand this customer as well. And of course, what is given is that you have an amazing product, because if you have a really bad product, then no amount of marketing is going to help you. So I'm assuming from the presentation that I'm going to share that you have an amazing product, you have something in terms of product and price and offering, the experience you're providing is unique, and that it works for the consumers you're going after. So the amazing product is a given. But if you have an amazing product and you've been able to understand your customers and define what that brand's USP is, that's really the beginning of your brand journey and brand awareness journey, right? And that's how we would start looking at putting together a marketing plan and a marketing strategy. Now, I'm not going to cover the product part at all, but let's assume you built an amazing product, and that's the first step. The consumer research part of it, you can use various tools. One tool that we actively use a lot is Google Trends. It's actually a free tool where you can go and actually understand what's trending, but also compare things that are trending. So you can compare a Swiggy versus Zomato versus Grofers, and you can do this for whatever industry you want, right? And you can see when Zomato did their IPO, they had a huge spike because they did a lot of things to actually promote themselves, and that's the red spike you see on this slide. And you could use this in different ways. You can look at certain products trending. Are more people looking for certain kinds of products? Are they looking for certain kinds of things? And you can also go deeper into each city as well. You can actually look at this entire table that I'm showing you in each state and each city. So there's a lot of powerful data that Google gives you for free, which also is a great way to understand your consumers. But definitely do go talk to consumers as well. I think consumer research is at the heart of what, sorry, consumer research is at the heart of what any marketer does. So it is important to understand those consumers. Now, the storytelling part of the brand, which is, how do you get your brand USP out there, right, is also something we'll talk about in the upper funnel, because once you've defined what your brand's USP is, you need a great visual story to bring that to life, right? And that's how you That if you look around the brands that you love, the brands that you associate with and you use, a lot of them have told you stories in different ways. That story might have been told to you through a video. It might have been told to you through the packaging that they have. It might be told to you through the retail store and what you saw there. But that storytelling is important to bring that brand's USP to life. So there's an example of how you tell a story about something as boring as tax and saving and investments and mutual funds. But it really comes down to, can you tell that story in a way that keeps you engaged for that 15, 20, 30 seconds, 40 seconds? And in the digital journey, that's all it takes. If you can touch that consumer multiple times with interesting 15, 30-second stories, that's what helps you build that brand. And that journey starts with great storytelling, which is over here. And I'm going to show you a couple of more examples as well. So this is actually a brand we've launched for Mahindra. This has actually been launched by the Mahindra Group, by the Mahindra Finance. It's a car subscription company called Quicklease, and it's again it's a way to launch a brand. And the way we did this was actually talk to customers. We actually spoke to customers, like I was saying, the consumer research, and we realized that the USP of Quicklease is that there are 3-4 USPs, and we said, let's take each of them and create interesting brand stories around it. And the one you just saw was around the fact that the tenure of a car loan typically is much longer. It's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whereas this lease can be taken for as low as 1 year as well. So the clarity of being able to figure out what that USP is and plugging that into your story is very important. And that starts, like I said, with a great product, the consumer research, and then great stories. And that's what you see on this slide as well. Now, you will come back and say, hey, I don't have the money to create such videos because it costs money, which is true. So there are some great tools out there that I put down some of them here. There's Animoto in video, and there's also a marketplace called Fiverr, which is quite useful for such videos. But there are low-cost ways to create these videos. You can start making low-cost videos and then eventually upgrade to some of the more sort of engaging ones that I showed you. So we've actually made videos with these tools. I'll show you an example of that on the next slide, where we use one of these tools, which doesn't cost much. These tools cost anywhere between 2,000 rupees a month to 3,000-4,000 rupees a month. So it's not very expensive to make videos using this. And the beauty of many of these tools is that they already have music, they already have static images that you can just use, which are royalty free. So a lot of this can actually be built practically within half a day if you really put your mind to it. So fairly easy to make some of this content and get started on the journey, and then create more interesting stories as you go along. Now, one other part of the upper funnel that's very important is your website, or if you're an app, app-based company than an app, but having that visual and the website really is like a digital storefront. If you don't have a retail store, then the website is where consumers come to see it. So that's very important to have in place. And again, today there are so many amazing tools out there to create great websites, be it on Wix, which is the world's largest website platform, where you can go build a website through a drag and drop model. You don't need any technical skills or coding skills to build it. And all these that you see here, right, Dukan or all of them, Builder.ai, they all help you build apps and sort of help you sell online without any coding experience or technical experience. And that's again a great way to start building your website and storefront. And the important part is to keep that experience core to what your brand is. If your brand is premium, then your website should also look premium. If your brand is about variety and having the largest inventory available, then that should reflect in whatever you do, including on your website and app as well. Right. So that's the upper funnel, which is really about, having a great product, understanding your consumers, and then telling your story and your brand USP effectively, right? So building your brand, building awareness, making sure you have great stories about your brand is really the upper funnel. And that's typically what you want to start with. You don't want to directly start saying, this is my product, this is my price, come buy. It doesn't work. You need to build a story, you need to build something that connects your consumers with the brand. Now moving to the mid funnel, which is really how do you get that consideration going? How do you get consumers to make your brand as part of the consideration set? That's really where we see a lot of the social media, a lot of the content really come into play to build that, especially on the digital front. And social media can be a great way to kind of drive that as well. For most consumer brands, Instagram is a great place to start. I haven't put YouTube here consciously because YouTube takes a lot more effort to build traction and engagement, and it's usually for brands which are slightly more evolved. But Instagram is a great way to get that journey started. And if your audience is slightly older, then even Facebook today still works. If you're a B2B brand, then of course LinkedIn would be a great place to kind of get that started. And on Instagram or social in general, the key is how do you get that engagement for those few seconds, like I was saying, and tell that story differently. Over here, for example, you see we're talking about insurance and protection, but in a very different way, so that you actually stop and see for those 2-3 seconds what we're trying to say, right? And of course, there will be a caption that goes along with it that explains what we mean by protection and health insurance and other things. And we've seen some amazing examples, especially during COVID and later on. This is something Tesco did they realized a lot of people are going for the first time to shop because they often shopped online or somebody else in the house shopped for the groceries. And when they realized that people didn't know what turmeric looked like, what ginger looked like, then they said, okay, let's help these consumers. And it's also about figuring out what's relevant to your consumers. And the consumer research you do in the beginning actually also helps here to build that story. And each platform is different. Instagram is very different than YouTube, very different than LinkedIn. And you need to kind of keep on top of it. For example, on Instagram today, Reels are the #1 trending format. Very easy to make a Reel today because practically, all you need is your phone and good lighting, and you're good to go to make some videos. Again, I want to show you some content which is video content, but it's not about sort of top funnel because it's really about creating engagement. It's not a very hard sell. It's really about creating engagement, and you'll see why I'm saying that when you see the video. And it is in Hindi, but hopefully those who don't understand Hindi will still get some sense of what's happening on the video. So what was amazing about this campaign was this was actually executed in April of 2020, in the peak of the lockdown, April, May 2020. And again, it was based on research that all of people in corporate India were missing their office. They wanted to go back to their office, to their shops, to their retail stores. And we said, what if the office missed you back? And that's how we came up with this campaign, which is called You Made It Click. It was actually one of the most successful COVID-related campaigns in India. And the unique part about this campaign is that all the footage you saw on this video, every single second of footage you saw on this video was purchased online. So practically anybody in this room could have gone, purchased this footage and made this happen. But it actually comes down to the power of the idea, the power of the script, and the ability to bring that together for a brand and making it happen. But it is possible to create engagement practically out of thin air because we didn't have to go out and shoot it because you couldn't shoot anything during COVID. This is the last one I'm going to show you on the social media front, which is actually something for World Social Media Day that was created. And it's an example of how when you're creating something for a channel like Instagram, you want to be creating something which is vertical first, because that's how consumers today think and consume the videos and content. And two, a lot of the content that users today see is sound off. That means they don't always have their sound on, especially on Instagram. On YouTube, for example, you would always have your sound on because you're listening to music, you're watching a trailer, you're learning something. Whereas on Instagram, often you're seeing reels or you're seeing something else and you're just swiping through, may not have your sound on. So do make your content with the sound off experience is what we call it. You can always have sound. The sound elevates the experience, but it doesn't always need to be used to communicate it. So this is a campaign we did to promote World Social Media Day, which was called Feel It Before You Reel It, where the intent was to tell people, enjoy every moment of your life. Don't constantly be creating reels, which a lot of people do today. So again, you can understand this video irrespective of whether you know the language or not. And that's the power of a sound off experience and ability to create vertical first and digital first content. Again, this is reiterating some of the things I've been saying around digital videos, which is shorter is better. You want to capture attention quickly, design for sound off, like I was saying. And especially if you're building for Instagram, then think vertical and not horizontal. Another important thing is to build for each step of the funnel. So if you're creating something which is for top of the funnel or something that's for bottom of the funnel, the way you would treat that content and what you would say would vary a lot. And that's something to kind of look at. And finally, building connect as well. On the influencer front as well, there's a lot of interesting things happening. There are ways to create useful content using creators and influencers today. There are about 1 lakh plus creators in India today of a certain size, and that's quite exciting. I'm just going to show you a quick video of something where you can actually do a lot of extensive work with influencers and creators, where right from creating a music to working with multiple creators to bringing a campaign to life, there's a lot that today is happening. Again, this was a campaign that reached almost 100 million Indians, so a very large campaign for Snapdeal. I'll pause it here, but this campaign is really about saying, I'm ready, India's ready, this is our moment, let's capture it. And we actually looked at creators in different fields across the country who have done amazing things in their own space and brought this together. So influencer campaigns can also be fairly advanced now, as you can see from this, but they can also be as simple as taking a quick picture and sharing it. And a lot of these influencers have amazing reach as well. On the on the social media front, one thing to also keep in mind is that 93% of content that consumers today consume in India is actually not in English. And this is official stats from YouTube. In fact, uh, 93% content is non-English, right? So, and that's the power of vernacular. So wherever relevant, try and use vernacular in the brand campaigns and content that you're creating. So that's the mid funnel, which is a lot about. So to build consideration, it's really about creating engagement, being able to continuously sort of create content that interacts with them and builds that engagement. The bottom funnel is where a lot of that business starts coming in, right? You're starting to now focus on revenue, on sales, on business, and obviously Google and Meta to a large extent cater to that piece. Google and Meta put together would be controlling close to about 80% of every rupee that's spent on digital in India. The balance 20% goes to a mix of Hotstar, Amazon, Flipkart, Times, and a few others. Now, on digital, there are two broad ways to go after consumers when you look at bottom of the funnel. One is, what are they interested in? So, do they love, let's say, movies? Do they love biking? Do they love music? Do they love traveling? Do they love food? So whatever that interest is sort of get captured through your digital journey. The second is what we call as intent, which is, what are you interested in buying today? Are you interested in buying a new laptop today? Are you interested in buying a new car today? Are you interested in buying a new course or an MBA? You want to do an MBA today, right? So that intent is what gets captured, and you can go after the users based on that. And you can combine obviously both these, but at a very broad level, these are the two ways you can go after consumers digitally, and that allows you to kind of target consumers and go after them efficiently. And today, the kind of tracking that's available to make all of this happen is quite powerful, and you can obviously go down all the way down to a radius of 1 kilometer to go after the audience that you want, and that's how it makes it powerful. And the bottom funnel, I'm going to combine it with the measuring success, because what happens is today the journey is so complex, and you can obviously target users across, right? Today, all of us have multiple devices. We all have a desktop. We all have a mobile. Often we also have a tablet or an iPad or a Samsung tab. A lot of this journey then becomes complex. It is possible to stitch it together, but it is a complex consumer journey that's there digitally. And when things started off in digital, a lot of it is about comments, website visitors, walk-ins to your stores. But today we really talk about the actual impact, which is the sales, which is the inquiries, and how you're really building your brand through reach and engagement. And you can measure that across the funnel. Even at the brand awareness level, we today do brand lift studies and search interest studies, because we need to understand, are you actually building the brand to the right audience or not? And of course, at the bottom funnel, you're tracking sales, you're tracking walk-ins, you're tracking inquiries. So it's fairly easy to track some of those pieces. So with that, I'm going to, Professor told me to keep it short. So I've kept it short and tight. Happy to sort of get into Q&A now and get a sense of what's on your mind and how we can answer that.
Thank you, Vikas. That's a very interesting presentation. I think throughout you have used video to engage with us and help us connect to what you're trying to say. I think that itself is living in all the elements of what you're professing. so that's a fantastic way that you've chosen to engage the audience and engage all of us in your presentation. You have started with the contours and ingredients of this whole marketing that we are planning to, that one is supposed to actually undertake. Now, the full funnel marketing, as is the theory and as is the practice, involves hundreds of other things to actually balance in. And very, very superficially, I think we have looked at many things. I'm sure the audience would have questions to come by. They would like to seek answers for those queries around those subtopics as well. So the full funnel marketing across different stages, and then how storytelling and various other methods of video, and how specifically we have to get into Instagram, especially those tips like vertical first and sound off is a fantastic thing. I'm sure the stickiness, engagement, and also in terms of driving the results for the campaign will definitely work with these measures. And not to forget, some of the tools that you have enlisted at every step is extremely important. And for businesses, small and big, this is going to be very interesting. And people who are in media teams, people who are in digital teams, people who are taking care of marketing activities and branding activities will be able to immensely benefit from this. So that sets the entire landscape for the jungle, the digital jungle. And I'm sure we'll have several opportunities of going over it again and again with questions that the audience would have. I'll quickly request Professor Prasad to come in and start the cluster number 1. Professor Prasad, please come.
Thank you, Professor Rao. I think it was, very, very scientific approach, though it has been highly visual. There's a related question a bit later, but I'd like to start with your journey and how you have built this expertise in digital marketing. How did it all happen?
Oh, no, yeah, thanks, Professor Prasad. I think it's been about 10 years since we started this. I started my digital journey with a company called the Murugappa Group, which is a conglomerate, and I was part of their cycles division, TI Cycles. And that's actually where I got my first exposure to digital, because they were one of the early adopters of Facebook and YouTube, and they were actually selling on the website in 2010, 11, which is very, very early on. And we are in fact handling that entire website and sales. So I think, got some early exposure there. That's how I started understanding some of these areas. And having studied and worked abroad, I think it also helped set some context of what is the power of digital, because we were a little behind back then. Today, we are probably on par with other countries. But back then, we were a bit behind when it came to access to internet, to mobile devices. So I think that's really how I started seeing a lot of the marketing and digital foray. And then from there on, it's been an amazing 10 years since I started out in 2012. And I think first few years, we were selling the power of digital more than selling ourselves, because you had to convince people that you needed to leverage digital. Today, I think you don't need to do that anymore. And I think it's been, in fact, one amazing thing that's going to happen by the end of this year is that the amount of marketing dollars that will go into digital in India is going to surpass marketing dollars in television in India in 2022. So it's actually a pivotal year in digital journey.
Thank you. Now we come to the question of the jungle. So
Right.
When we hear this word, I mean, you think about brute force, self-interest, anything goes. How do you, contrast it? And what you presented was very scientific.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you put this, kind of paradigm there?
No, absolutely. I think you said the right things. Brute force. The jungle is about survival of the fittest. And fortunately, unfortunately, that's also the case with anything in the marketing world, because there's so much clutter out there. In fact, I was talking to the team at Meta the other day. They said an individual on a given day is typically seeing about 300 different content pieces, typically, right, on their social media feed and social media channels. Now, that means you're seeing 300 different messages every day. So that means you need to be able to declutter and quickly catch attention. And that's the power of what you need to do. It's not easy, definitely not. And that's why it's the survival of the fittest. And that's also what makes the digital jungle a lot more complex, because each animal is different. Instagram is different, YouTube is different, your website is different, Amazon is different. How you would treat all of this needs to be very, very different. And you need to have your own strengths. and you should know what those strengths are. And hence we use the analogy of the jungle, because it is going to be survival of the fittest. It is going to require some bit of brute force. It will require some bloodshed, but you will need to keep at it and keep living, keep having a sustainable way of doing this, and eventually you'll succeed. And for us, when we look at it, it's also about continuously learning. So a lot of what I showed today is things we've learned over time. So even for your brand or your business, you need to continuously learn how to survive in that jungle, and that's how it works.
Excellent. I think the other thing which comes to my mind when I think about jungle, easy to get lost. You don't know which way to go.
True. It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So coming to the next query, are there any principles in this jungle? I mean, are there any laws which you have learned over a period of time which you'd like to share?
Yeah. I think I shared some of it in the deck, but I think from an overall perspective, I think need to keep things simple and close to the core of what you stand for. I think that's definitely one law. Be true to who you are as a brand, because often, people want to try so many different new things. They want to do this, they want to do that, but stay close to who you are, stay close to your truth, to your North Star. I think that's important. I think the second is what I was saying earlier, is you need to continuously learn and experiment. If you're not experimenting, if you're not learning from the digital, it's a lost cause, because things change so quickly. If, for example, today you're not creating 10 reels a month, then you're not going to get engagement on Instagram, right? So you need to know that, learn that, pick that skill up, make that reel, test what reels work, which reels work for you. There are small brands out there today that get 1 million views on reels if they make the right reel. So the question is, can you make it? Because it's not about being the biggest brand, but it is about making the best reel. So can you learn and experiment and make that happen? So I think a lot of it is about learning, experimenting, and sort of staying hungry, sort of to try new things.
Fabulous. I think these basic principles are easy to remember, and you can validate whatever you're doing every day with these basic principles.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. The next question is about the balancing the phygital and the physical and the digital. A lot of businesses which started digital have come back to also become phygital. So for marketing, how do you balance both the worlds?
Yeah. I think, in our view, there is no digital business. You are always in some other business. That means, for example, Lenskart is not an online optical store business. It is an optical retail chain. They happen to also sell online, but Lenskart is an optical retail chain. It's not an optical digital business, right? So I think the question is, you need to build businesses that last, build businesses in an industry where you can create a dent. So that's really where the merger of omni-channel comes in. But in our view, most good e-commerce and digital players will have a significant online presence in the next few years. And there is no doubt about it, because you are ultimately building a brand for consumers, and consumers want to buy everywhere. And even in the US today, e-commerce only 15, 16, 17% of overall retail sales. So India will probably get to that, but it's not going to suddenly become 100% of sales is not going to happen online. How does marketing happen? And we track this because today we track retail store walk-ins through digital. So if somebody's seeing something on YouTube, on Instagram, and then walks into my store offline, today we can track that. And we do that for many other retailers. It's called store visit tracking. Google, in fact, has a very strong product around this to be able to do store visit tracking. And that's really the merger of online, digital. It all comes together very nicely, because today data, your GPS, all of that can help you track that. It's not easy, but it is possible to do some of these things to truly create a more omni-channel experience.
Can you take the example of something not like e-commerce, a very traditional business where this is 20%, may not be 80%? Yeah,
I think one of the retailers that one of the brands we actively work with is a brand called Jaqua, which is a sanitary ware brand. They are the leader in the bath and lighting space now. They sell faucets, taps, shower cubicles and things like that. So what we do for them is really for them 95% sales happen online, right? And only few percentage points happens online. But in terms of building the brand, in terms of connecting with the consumers, actually almost 30%, 35% is on digital because the consumers are online, right? So, and that's how we look at it for a traditional player. You may still want to do a lot of offline, you may still want to do a lot of television, you may still want to do a lot of newspaper and tactical things in local areas and in the vicinities where it's important to you. But your consumers are also very digitally active. Can you also be present there to engage with them and create that connect? And that's how we would have a more omni-channel experience. So even large brands like P&G and Reckitt today, almost 20-25% of their marketing now is on digital, which used to be single digits not very long ago. Until 5 years ago, P&G and HUL's digital spends were single digits compared to what they were doing elsewhere. Today, it's almost 20-25%.
Excellent. So there's a large world out there where the figures are growing, and which has enabled, for what you mentioned today, that it's just crossed TV, digital.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. The next question is, it's related to education, and it's just an instance. Perhaps it's not the same in other worlds. Digital marketing in education, there's a lot of money being spent across the board, and there are a lot of players who claim to be good in terms of platforms, people who do digital marketing. But when you talk to the platforms which do it, the costs that they mention are above 50% of revenue. When you talk to them, they say that their charges are above 50% of revenue. Now, there's something intrinsically not so okay in that, because, I mean, how long can that go on? Because the prime value remains in education, the learning part.
Yeah.
How do you respond to this?
I should actually ask the VCs who fund that. I have no answer to it. In fact, I was seeing, I hope there are no journalists here, but I was seeing the Byju's annual report, which was recently released, and they have a loss of 2,000 odd crores. And I can't fathom, like you rightly said, how long does this go, right? When do you recover the 2,000 crores that you've lost in just one single year? Forget the next few years where you may need to spend even more to sustain and grow. So I think fundamentally it comes down to, is your business model sustainable? Is your product good? And to some extent, it's also about VCs, fueling money into the wrong business model, right? So that's why I said ask this question to the VCs, because you're fueling money to a business model which may not be sustainable ever. So then, yes, you could do an IPO and still make your money, but is the business going to be sustainable? Is a question mark. And I think a lot of it comes down to unit economics, and many of these edtechs don't have unit economics. And in fact, we did a small edtech play of our own around the time when COVID started, and we faced the same issue, and then we closed the business because the cost of acquiring that customer was almost 90% of the cost of the course. And if you add up the cost of delivering the program, the teachers, professors, content creation, assessment, essentially then you're paying the student to take the course up, which doesn't make any sense. So fundamentally, then we shut that business and moved on. So it comes down to unit economics, and I think edtech is still in a space where they haven't figured that out. And again, it doesn't have to be only edtech; it has to be education, but omni-channel, right? And I think actually universities and institutions like ICFAI, for example, are in a great place to do that because you already have that unit economics in place. Question is, can you replicate that digitally and make that happen? That is probably a better approach, and that's a true technology-led education business than just a technology business. And they've always looked at it as a technology business and not as an education business, and that's where the fallacy is.
Now, if you were to come back to this and look back at the funnel and suggest where the focus has to be with respect to education, because people have tried and then there's a lot of money which has gone into it. So there's something which has not worked. So if you come back to your funnel, how do you connect it to education? Where do you think in the present point of time the focus should be?
I think on the product itself. So when I started on my presentation, I said you need to build an amazing product. I think many of these edtechs don't have that. So you're then actively selling something which requires hard selling. You need 500 salespeople going and selling something in your house. That doesn't work, right? So in fact, some of the good edtechs that we know of, and I can name one or two. One is called Growth School, which actually does cohort-based programs. They are actually profitable at a unit economics level because they have an amazing product. They get such amazing referral and organic signups because the product is so good. Yes, they do marketing, they have salespeople, but the entire journey is fairly seamless. They don't have somebody calling you and hounding you to sign up because they know the product is good. So I think it comes down to, for many of them, the product has to be amazing, right? Some of the edtech players have it, but vast majority of them don't. And hence that means they need to actively sell it. And that's where a lot of that cost starts going up.
Excellent. I think we have talked a lot of fundamentals here. And I'm glad that there are many other industries and sectors which are not looking at it like that, and which are actually taking this digital journey forward and giving all of us a lot of examples on what we should actually do.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I think in the bargain, you've also responded to a couple of other questions related to edtechs and, bust and, capital markets which are funding it. So over to Professor Sudhakar Rao.
Thank you. Vikas, this is interesting. And I'm particularly bold about the response that you have given with respect to edtech. I think it is marrying the principles with the practices. The principle that you mentioned is that keep it simple and closest possible to the core of what you are or who you are. So marry that with the practice here. Is edtech about technology or education? Yes.
Yeah.
So
it has to be first about education. That's where they get it wrong. So
it's about education. So you should be closer to education rather than being closer to technology. I think that's fantastic way of delineating it for us. Thank you so much. I'll now take some simple, easy, short answer questions types. I'll also request the audience, if they have any additional questions, they can raise their hand and we'll open the window. They can directly speak to Mr. Vikas Chawla, but let me take up a couple of questions before that. Lot of organizations, when they would like to build capabilities within the organizations for digital marketing, the biggest crunch is for talent. Where do you get people from? So my question to you, Vikas, is where do we find the right talent?
It's a tough one. So, and it actually comes back to the edtech question, right? Because there are very few institutions, universities, and edtech players that are actually creating a good source of digital talent. There are a few, but not enough for the amount of demand of talent that exists, right? So, frankly, it is a challenge, and it actually continues to be the number one challenge for us. It's not getting new clients, it's not business, it's not technology, it's not process, it's actually talent. So how are we tackling it? I think one, we found some good partners where we do get good talent. So for example, we do work with some partners like Chawla, which actually does a very intensive. So Chawla is a very unique example because they do an intensive, complete full day program from 10 to 7 p.m. for 12 full weeks. It is meant for freshers or somebody who wants to change careers, but it's an intensive 12-week program with a lot of live programs, with some recorded programs, a lot of doubt clearing sessions, and a lot of assessment and a lot of group work. And we've seen these more focused full-time sort of programs work really well. So there are some good partners like that where we get a lot of talent from. Second is we do a lot of campus hiring. So we do campus hiring from across top arts and science colleges, undergrad colleges, and a lot of media schools like MICA and Symbiosis and others, but also equally arts and science colleges like Xavier's in Bombay or Christ in Bangalore or MOP or Loyola in Chennai. We look at different cities, different universities, and we have our own academy that trains that talent. Again, it's a fairly robust 30, 60, 90-day plan that we do to get them onto speed. The bigger challenge actually comes in the mid-level to senior level talent, and there's a huge crunch there even today. All the leaders that we have in an organization today have been with us for a few years. So my advice would be catch them early, train them, think of it as a long-term sort of plan, and groom your talent to become senior leaders in the organization. And that's what's worked for us. Laterally hiring senior leaders, we do, but it's not as easy because there aren't enough senior talent out there in this space.
Fantastic. I think you have given the nice example of how you are handling yourself. You're partnering with people who are incubating them or conducting programs which are intensive so that they churn out good professionals. And also you're hiring from the campuses, and you have your own academy of developing the pipeline. So,
yeah.
So these three routes with which you, thank you so much. The second one is, we have this spectrum of requirements from awareness to action or awareness to sale. Within this, how would you position the following? Google search, ads, social media channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, Insta, YouTube, in the journey from awareness to sale?
Yeah, I think today you can track all of this, right? So I can actually track which audience is there in my awareness stage today, and can I show them a second message and then finally take them to an action that I want. And that ability to track that audience and have different messages at different points, that's really the power of being able to take them from awareness to action. So often what we do is we would look at what kind of communication we need to do across these funnels, then sequence them in a way that makes sense, and then take that audience through that. It doesn't mean everyone will go through it. Some may drop off. So then you bring them back with a different communication to keep that conversation going. So we have different journeys that we build, both on the social media platforms, so be it Google or Facebook or Instagram, but also once they hit the website, then we have other marketing automation tools to kick in to do journeys from there on. If they've added to cart, if they've not added to cart, if they've inquired but didn't sign up. So we have different journeys depending on the business to bring that from awareness to action. It's fairly templatized today. Where the power comes in is the creative and the communication. What are you saying? When are you saying it? That's really the magic sauce in that sense.
Very interesting. So customized journeys. So you'll have to build journeys for different audiences and drive till. Even in our own experience, we have seen website. People who have hit the website are turning up much faster and more profitable to us, actually.
Yeah.
So as you bring them along till website, I think from there on we have other tools to actually pursue, and the closures are quicker. Closures are more profitable at that stage. Fantastic. Before I go to Lavanya, we have another question. What is your suggestion? How can we approach customers in the manufacturing field using digital marketing? I mean, this is just an application-oriented question. If you have any top of the mind tips, you can share with us.
Yeah, manufacturing. Frankly, it's a few customers that you need. So I would say use LinkedIn or use IndiaMart or one of these platforms to connect with the right buyers or sellers, depending on what you're doing. I think it's definitely your audience is there digitally, right? So they are spending time online. So one way to look at it is, can I go connect with them directly and talk to them? So you can do that. Or the second way would be to create interesting content on YouTube. So they are looking for something. For example, they're looking for what is the process of creating, let's say, cotton yarn, because they want to understand that for their business. Now, you as a manufacturer of cotton yarn could actually create an interesting video that can do that. It's not easy, but that's how you would do it.
Interesting. I think we should go on YouTube and try and create some educational videos and slowly cultivate them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because the next one, after which I will go to Lavanya, we can, Srikanth, can we open the window for Lavanya also? So the question quickly is, how does one arrive at the trade-off between the freedom and the privacy in the digital space? There are lots of players, and how do we protect the privacy? One would like to actually put out a lot of content there for social and social freedom for various customers of all segments as well. But how do you actually uphold privacy? I think this is a concern
Yeah, I think, it's it's a difficult and complex question because privacy is possible and all these platforms can enable privacy with a click of a button. But what happens as a repercussion of it is you will start seeing irrelevant communication, irrelevant ads. Today, I know Professor Rao wants to buy a shoe, so I show him more ads of a shoe. So actually, he finds it relevant. The moment I don't know that Professor Rao wants a shoe, then I'm going to show him an ad for a car, for a laptop, for a mobile, and for a shoe. And that actually means there is so much more clutter in Professor Rao's digital feed. So that's actually one part of the reason why many of these brands haven't done it. The second part of this is the large part of this digital economy is free. So if we take away the ability to target consumers, so who pays for it then? Are consumers going to pay for it? Unlikely. Are brands going to pay for it without finding value in it? Unlikely. So then the question comes down to how will they monetize this if there is no ability to go after the right users that it's there, right? And the last part of it is also, when you look at the digital journey, I may say I'm a privacy first app, but there are other apps that continue to flaunt that. I'm at a disadvantage. So nobody wants to take the first step, right? So it is like it's not a organized cartel, but it's like an unorganized cartel because if everybody does it together, then it's fantastic, but that's never going to happen. And if I take the first step, then I'm at a disadvantage and I have my shareholders to answer to. So it's a very complex problem and I've only highlighted a few of them, but it's something we talk about a lot, but it's not an easy problem to solve for. Technologically, it's actually very easy to solve. They can just switch on a button and it can do it. But I think there are a lot of other economic and social challenges that go with it that are harder to solve for.
Fantastic. I think you have answered in a manner that it is definitely very, very complex. And again, here the general rules are actually coming into play.
Yeah.
Especially the third factor that you mentioned, that if one merchandiser takes the route of privacy first, then one is at a disadvantage. So again, it's a general kind of thing. One needs to.
And I just want to add here, right? You may think Apple is privacy first, but in reality, the reason they have privacy first is because they want to push advertisers to their ecosystem to advertise. So in fact, the Apple Ads ecosystem and Apple Ads revenue has shot up when they made that change of privacy to Facebook. So when they stopped Facebook from tracking users, the Apple Ads revenue from that quarter onwards till now, if you go and look at the report, you'll realize has shot up. So there are economic reasons for those privacy decisions. It's not just for the sake of privacy.
But privacy is upheld.
Yes, for a certain set of users, for certain use cases, Apple still gives you the ability to go after some of those users.
Right. It is layered. It is not.
It is layered. They don't let third-party apps use the data, but they allow Apple itself to use the data. So there's a bit of, it's a layered answer.
Yeah, correct. Yes, that's a very, very good example of how the practices are actually different. Yes, it sticks to the general rule again. The bigger the player, the greater the muscle, the believability that you have. And in fact, the brand has been built over a long period of time. And therefore, a privacy first claim is something which is quite believable, even if it is for economic reasons, even if it is for layered approaches that one has built.
Yeah.
The same approach, if someone else takes, probably
it won't work. It won't work. Yeah, correct.
So Vikas, with your permission, I'll request
yes, Lavanya,
to raise the question. Over to you, Lavanya.
Good evening, sir. Thanks a lot for the presentation. As a supplementary question, in the digital jungle, is any CRM tool in the pipeline to achieve a trade-off between digital freedom and privacy, sir?
Unfortunately not. I mean, we all want to watch YouTube. We all want to be on Instagram. Then it's not possible. There are, of course, today search engines that are privacy first, but you will not get the same experience that you would get on Google. The same way there is Vimeo that doesn't have as much targeting or ads, but you may not find the same content library you find on YouTube. You will not find that on Vimeo. So there are options, no doubt about it, but it may not give you the same experience, and hence nobody uses it. So unfortunately not. The only way to be privacy first is to stop using a mobile phone. That's the only way to do it, unfortunately.
Very interesting. There was a cartoon on social media recently on WhatsApp. So two crows are actually looking at a scarecrow, and they are discussing between themselves, is this a human being or a scarecrow? So the next crow says, hey, it's not a human being because he's not checking his mobile. So we can go ahead. So yes, I have also checked my mobile while talking to you.
Yeah. So that's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
You can't, unless you give away a mobile phone, it's not going to work.
Correct.
Even if you have an Apple, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So we'll request Shweta Anand to come in to ask the question next. How to make a user engaging content for social media in education industry? I mean, this is a corollary of what we have discussed before.
It comes back to the same basics. If you understand what your consumers want and you have a good consumer research, you will know what are their pain points, what do they care for. So we work with a few edtech players, right? So in India, the number one thing is placements and salaries and jobs. So, that's a big pain point for many of them. So then can you create content which is useful for that? How do you crack an interview? What are the kind of things that you can do to prepare a good CV? There's so many things you can do to help them get a better job. It could be communication skills. How do you improve your communication skills? What are the top tips there? What are the top books you should be reading so that you can actually answer your interviewers' questions better, right? So there are hundreds of things you can do just around this theme of placements and jobs, right? So like that, you figure out what are the other pain points, and that will vary depending on what program, what course you're offering. And basis that, you figure out how to engage. But it comes back to the basics. Figure out what your consumers want. What are their biggest pain points? When you look at content, don't think about what you are selling. When you think about content, think about what your users want, and then work backwards to create that. If you're going to do a hard sell, that doesn't work on content. For that you have ads, for that you have brand awareness videos. You can create that. But when you think of content, it has to be user first.
Great. Now I would like to request Professor Prasad to come in. We have created a new product called Online MBA, which is a fully online program. Based on what Mr. Vikas has mentioned in terms of a template, in terms of keeping it user focused, not what you have. I think this we have studied for decades now. Do not sell what you have, but sell what the customer wants. From that perspective, what are the challenges on one hand, and other hand, intentionally, what are the pain points that we are planning to actually address through our online MBA program, and vis-a-vis what challenges that we are encountering in the recent journey of the last 1 year? And probably we can ask Mr. Vikas to give a solution or two.
This program targets working executives. People do online programs because they can't come to a campus. If they could, and they could also afford the good programs, they would have in the country. So they opt for online programs from good institutions so that they're assured of a certain quality. So the fundamental driver is lack of time. I mean, people would like to fit the schedule into their day without being too burdened. And that is one of the user pain points. So if they're able to find something which gives them value, not just a certificate. I mean, they should be able to add value and punch and move on to their next career goal because of doing a program. So if they're able to do that, then I think they would consider it far better. So time, I see, is a huge pain point. The other thing that I can see is that things are made difficult normally. I mean, learning is not as simple as it should be. Just as, the lesson from advertising and the world of creativity is how to make things simple, because we are glued on to televisions and other mediums, or this, for example, this YouTube video. Why? Because it caught the attention. I think learning is not made that way conventionally. It is made complicated. While in reality, when you want to solve a problem, you have to think step by step. You can't suddenly put a framework and put some algorithm there and say, okay, hey, this is the answer. You have to really reflect and wonder what are the issues involved in that when you're solving a real life problem. Okay, and then you should be able to, in each of those issues, you should be able to take it step by step. Now, that sort of an approach is not, that step-by-step approach is not fostered so much. And therefore, if people are able to, those who are working are able to see that in everything that there is something that they can learn and they can use as basic principles. So it's as much as a jungle that we are talking about. So if you are able to put those bytes in and then structure it in a certain way, and the customer is able to understand that, I think they love learning far more than they have been currently.
So what are the challenges for us while we are navigating through this digital jungle for us?
I think one is, getting to the right target group. If you're talking about marketing, if you're talking about identifying customers, getting to the right target group and then communicating to them. I mean, what we have found in the last year's journey is that once they understand that you're able to give a solution, things are far more better. But the stage where you're saying that, there are a lot of people out there and people need, career upgrades much more today than it was perhaps 10 years later. At that stage, our ability to identify and communicate, it's not simple. I mean, it's not that straightforward. It is complex. It is a jungle. That's a fact.
Okay, well, I'll request Vikas to come in, because the 2 points mentioned by Professor Prasad is that we know there is a need. There's a greater need today than before for these programs, number one. Number two, the pain point while accessing these programs is the lack of time on their side. Now, and the solution provided, or the tactic provided by Professor Prasad, is that bite-sized learning packets is what we are supposed to give them and make it workable for them. There is a solution, there is a need existing, and there is an approach. But access to the right target market, which is predominantly a marketing function, marketing activity, and convincing them to actually enroll. These are the marketing challenges. But if you look at the jungle outside, there are so many online MBA programs available now, online MBA or non-MBA programs. Various universities are taking it up. It has become too crowded, and EdTech players have partnered with these universities and they're floating these programs at a higher cost. Deep discounting is also being done at the other end. How do you visualize where it is going to actually land up, and what is the future that we see maybe a couple of years from now? Vikas.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge, and I think obviously you understand the education space and what kind of programs work for what audiences. I think that the challenge is one, I would say, in what is the impact you're creating in the learner's life and the learner's learning curve, right? And that's where we've seen a lot of programs online fail. The learning impact and the impact required for that individual to move up in their career and their function or get a higher salary because of this, that impact, if it's not there, then it's very difficult for that program to survive. And that's why we see a lot of the cohort-based programs where it's intensive, but so it's not actually about the time, in my view. Everyone's busy in their lives, but the program shouldn't, the program can obviously have bite-sized content, no doubt, but unless the program is intensive and can deliver that value, it may not, in my view, survive. So in my view, it's not about the bite-sized content at all. It's about the final impact on the learner's life.
Great. So what Vikas you're saying is that we should create a track record and evidence of the impact this program makes or creates
Yeah.
And then that would actually bring back more of them to the program.
And actually, bite-sized content is good, and can we follow it up with assessments to see whether that works? Because often we've seen, you know, they're not able to, they need to assimilate that, right? So a lot of the good programs we've seen have a lot of live sessions for each topic, and from like Q&A and sort of problem solving sessions for each theme, because that helps for the actual learning that's required. So there is a lot of self-learning, but there's a lot of guided learning that's combined with it, and that's what helps. And often in this space we've seen is that, like you're saying, there's so many programs, so it actually comes down to you know, if I see my colleague moving up in their career and I know, hey, they did this program, that's actually going to be a bigger pull for you to get more students, not marketing actually.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Shweta Anand, would you like to take the question? Shrikant, can you open the window, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Vikas, sir, you have given us significant insights onto how to make use of digital tools for product and services branding. With your permission, I'd like to pivot the landscape slightly towards employer branding, because as you all have also agreed to, there is a significant shortage of talent in the market. How social media tools, digital tools can be utilized for employer branding, and how's the landscape at that front?
Yeah, it's similar. So actually, since you brought it out, maybe I'll quickly show this 30-second clip. So the same basics that I said across my presentation apply, right? So, and we've done this for our own employer branding. So you can see the video I just showed you, our employer branding and how do we actually get better talent. And we said we want to peg ourselves to say that we are here to groom you. We are the experts. We'll help groom you to become digital experts yourself. And that's the employer brand that we wanted to build for ourselves. So everything that I showed is what you would do even for an employer brand. It doesn't change. The purpose is different, but the basics remain the same. Tell a great story, stick to your core and engage. It's the same basic.
Thank you, sir.
Because we'll take this question on the Q&A box. Mobile as a medium is underutilized in India, especially in the rural markets, although we have a few success stories of FMCG players. What are the roadblocks for its underutilization? This is asked by Professor Bharti Gopal.
Yeah, good question, Professor Bharti. I think the first challenge is, and actually there's a very good article about this by this magazine called The Ken, which spoke about India. There are multiple Indias, right? And you're talking about Bharat. Now, the challenge is the average spending power in those areas is much, much lower. So who can actually spend their marketing money there is actually much fewer brands. So that's the first part of the challenge. So a lot of the money and spending power lies in big cities, and that's why a lot of the money on marketing also goes. The second is a lot of those users in smaller and rural areas, while they do have internet, it may not be at the speed and consistency that we have. So that means you're not able to tell a meaningful story as you would be able to do it on a 200 Mbps connection that you get at your house. And that's the other part of the challenge. So once that improves, and that's not far away, maybe in the next year or two, we should see far more consistent and better connectivity across rural markets as well. You would start seeing brands use that a lot more. And the third and last is there are very few brands today that create vernacular content at scale. And if you cannot create vernacular content at scale, you cannot cater to the rural market. So, the ability to create amazing rural content for the rural market is tough because you need to do it in 15, 20 different languages, right? And therein lies the challenge. There are probably, I would say, 200-300 brands in India that can actually do it well today. Once that number reaches 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, that's when you'll start seeing this utilization being much higher.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Prasad, would you have any question? After which I'll come back and take one question and close it.
I think not at this stage.
Not at
We'll
this
pass
stage.
it, yeah.
Fair enough. I thought you have any response to Vikas's.
Yeah, that is, I think, there's something that I'd like to. No, it's absolutely spot on. And that is that learning must give outcomes. Okay. And that is the core value that people require. There's a lot of hype outside, and that's actually what leads to the noise. But I think what is being said, and which is the basic philosophy that we follow, is that be very concerned about your students' progression. So if he is able to complete his semester 1, he's participating, he's getting the guidance the right way, and then he's able to move forward, then he will go on to semester 2. And he gets a hang of how he needs to get self-driven, and he will activate himself. He or she will activate themselves. So I think the progression, student progression, is the right metric there. So we need to be looking at the student progression, which is the core value at which we do go. However, our question was a little bit on how do you communicate all this back to the market?
Yeah, it comes back to the same thing. No? If you can show that these many people have progressed in their careers and grown in their careers, that's actually that's what they want to see. It's less about the delivery of the program, because that's incidental, that it's bite-sized and other things. I would think it's the core has to be outcomes. The core has to be, yeah, if the bite-sized content is core to what you're doing, yeah, then definitely we should talk about that as well. But unless the outcomes are covered, difficult to get the right set of audiences.
Absolutely. So I think it's a long-term game. It's not as short-term as it seems to be right now.
Correct. It has to be.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So Vikas, there's one last question before we conclude. This is unless and until someone raises their hand now. Have any cyber criminals, those cyber criminals who have been stalking this digital jungle, have they ever been brought to book, or we only keep taking defensive measures?
Yeah. Some of them have. So I think there's a lot of cybercrime across different themes, I would say, right? There's obviously cybercrime around the financial space. There's cybercrime around identity thefts and identity fraud. There's cybercrime around harassment of different kinds. I think, it depends on what it is. I think on the financial crime side, definitely, I think a lot of them have been sort of taken into task, and many of the cyber cell crime cell that we have in India is actually pretty good at tracking down some of this. I think some of the global threats we have from hacking and stuff, I think those are tougher to track, because a lot of times they're not out of India at all. They're sitting in some country where you can't track them at all. So I think, some of it is possible, some of it is not. I think the system is good enough of tracking down some of it, at least, not all of it. I think on the harassment side, I think that I would think there's more to be done. There's a lot of harassment that happens digitally. It's tougher to track also because it's fairly widespread, and it may not be the typical cyber criminal that you're thinking in your mind. It could actually be your neighborhood. It could be your neighbor who's doing it as well. So in that sense, it's more widespread. So I think it's tough. There is some bit of technology that comes into play, but it also comes down to how society, as a society, how we move forward and have more equality. And it's a much larger way to tackle that. It's not just whether our cybercrime cell or our cops able to track them. I think it's, as a society, how do we deal with a lot of these things makes a big difference.
Great. Thank you, Vikas, for that. And I must say that this session has actually lasted a little more than what we have imagined. It has taken good time, but must thank you for your patience in responding to all the queries very, very peacefully. I think your presentation itself has laid out several things very clearly, right from the landscape of full funnel marketing and the effectiveness of storytelling. What are the tools at each stage of the funnel that one can use? That has been actually very, very interesting and made at least a few things clear for us. See, the jungle maze is always there, but at least You have put that in perspective and simplified it to a great extent for many of us to actually follow. And at every step of this funnel and the pyramidic structure that we have, where to actually pull the levers and what to make work, depending on the journey of the brand, depending on the purpose of the campaign. I think with examples you have told us very clearly. Thank you very much on that. You have also given your views about not just the techniques of marketing and the tools of the marketing. You've also given your views on the business models, their effectiveness, the purposes of investors, venture capital funding. Are they really actually looking out for a sustainable business model? Are they creating unit economics? And so it is more on the business strategy level on one hand. On the other hand, on the cyber frauds, the privacy aspects, the technology aspects involved in that, and how the free economy doesn't mean that it is actually free. I think those perspectives are very interesting. And the third in the bigger bucket of your response have been suggestions on the edtech and education itself. I think largely on edtech and education we have spoken. They're extremely useful for us because you have taken us back again and again to the framework that you have explained, how to keep it very simple and closer to the core purpose of your business. I think they are also the basic principles of marketing. At the same time, having studied, having understood all this, if one retains the sense of simplicity, I think that person or that organization will be the winner. I think several takeaways that we have for all the industries that you have given suggestions, like manufacturing, chemical applications, education, edtech, and various other businesses that you talked about. I think everywhere. And your example of creating YouTube learner videos for manufacturing business as well, using social has been very, very interesting. And we take home not just that, but always be hungry to create the reels. It is not the size of the business that matters or the size of the brand that matters, but you should have the ability to create reels, large number of reels, keep testing, keep learning, keep going in that, and keep learning over a period of time. That's what everyone has done. You've also touched upon the issues related to the talent crunch. And I think all the stakeholders will have to work on it. Educational institutions, practitioners like you from the industry, where you have your own academies, and of course, specialized Kraftshala example kind of people who can create intensive programs, because the need for more digital marketers or marketing professionals is going up by the hour, by the day. Therefore, more such people will have to come on to play. So thank you very much for this very, very insightful conversation that you have made possible today. I also thank all the participants who have joined this evening. Thank you very much.
Pleasure is all mine. And I think a great job of summing up the entire session. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please do check out my book on Amazon. It's on the same title. And if you like it, then please do.
Sure, we'll do that. We'll definitely do that. We'll also recommend that to some of our students on the campus programs and on the online programs, student base. We'll share with them. I'm sure they will show a lot of interest in reading that book up. Very good. But we will also place this video, the recording of this conversation, on our archives. We also do a text summary of the entire conversation so that it is laid bare, made very clear for everyone to go back to it and refer again and again. So we request you to share the PPT with us so that will help us write the summary for them. Okay. Oh. Summary is something which puts everything in perspective. It lays out frameworks and also identifies solutions. Certain things in conversation, sometimes they go to and fro. But summary generally captures everything in an appropriate manner. And it is there for us to go back and see in the archives anytime. Yeah. So we'll request your help. We'll also share the summary with you for your nod. And when we publish, we will seek your approval as well. Your views and your responses and the frameworks that you have mentioned will probably be part of the summary, and we'll seek your nod before we publish that. Okay. So thank you very much, Vikas. On behalf of everyone here at ICFAI, on behalf of Professor Prasad also, and all the participants, we would like to thank you. We would like to go back to you again and again whenever we have doubts, I will probably send a mail or two and disturb you over time. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Right. So,
Thanks,
so
everyone.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining this Friday. Next Friday, again at 4:30 p.m., we are going to talk about another interesting topic that is coming up on September 23rd. September 23rd, we are going to have a guest by name Ram Bhamidi. Ram is going to be a very, very interesting speaker. He is going to share his inputs, some leadership lessons we will have from his journey as well. So stay tuned and come back on September 23rd at 4:30 p.m. Thank you.